Hello, and welcome to tonight's Loud and Proud. What is the one thing people find most interesting about you? Perhaps you have an unusual name. Perhaps you have a really gorgeous, long, thick hair that people love to comment on. Perhaps you were born with super genes that have made you fantastically tall. Well, whatever that is, we all have something that makes us extra interesting when we first meet someone. Tonight, we're going to break down what that means for someone living with a physical disability. What does it mean when the thing that people first find interesting about you is that thing that is different? Welcome to Loud and Proud, a show where we discuss important topics in the disability community. As always, thank you to Public House Media for providing us with a platform to have our show tonight. I'm your host, Nicole Kelly. I myself was born with only one hand, and I've spent the past couple of years of my life traveling and speaking at schools and universities across the country on the topic of disability. Do you happen to live with a disability? If so, hello and welcome to a place where you can get connected to experts in our community. Find thought leaders who are making changes and speaking out. If this show resonates with you, please drop a line in the comments below. It can be while we are going live here tonight, or it can be after the show ends. I promise I will be checking, and I would love to get to know you and what your story is all about. 1 in 5 Americans live with a disability, so chances are, if you don't actually have the disability, someone who is a friend or who is a family member maybe does. So if that is you, welcome to a place where you can learn more about what is going on in a world that probably touches your life in some way. Please feel free to share anything. If what I say resonates with you, if what my guest says resonates with you, the goal of this show is to educate. And the more people who watch, the more people we educate through this awesome power of conversation that we're having. So now, with all of that being said, I would like to go on to the highlight of my show, the #1 booked college and university speaker in all of America, a guy who has literally shared his message with millions. I want to welcome to the show today, Mr. Matt Glowacki. And he's coming up in 3, 2, 1. Matt, hello!
Hi, Nicole. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Matt, can you tell us, first of all, where you're at? And then can you tell us what you've been up to?
Yeah, certainly. Again, I am the most booked diversity speaker in America. And so, of course, even on days like today in December, I am on my way to a speech in Pennsylvania. And so I'm at, I hate to even say it, but I'm at a rest stop just outside of Toledo, Ohio. And I get to talk to you, which is really cool. This is super exciting. And thank you very much for having me on your program.
Absolutely. Thank you for yet again pulling off into your favorite rest stop.
It is. This is my favorite one. They've got Panera. How does it get any better than that?
It doesn't get any better than that. You even said how many miles away from home it was for you. So life of a traveler.
It's the life, but it's good.
Good. Well, can you tell us share a little bit about your life with us? What is different about you? What is your disability? And what is it that you talk about when you go and you talk to these millions?
Well, if people can't see because I'm sitting in a car, but I'm a person who was born without any legs. There's no real reason for it. It was just something that happened, but it has caused me to live my life in a little different way. My primary means of transportation is a wheelchair, and basically because of the presence of my wheelchair, every time I meet somebody, that seems to be like what you said earlier. That seems to be a distinguishing characteristic that people want to talk about. And so I run the experiment every single day, and I'm kind of an expert about talking to people about it. And so I've come up with some ideas, and I like to share them with people. Right now, my primary idea that I'm trying to get out in the world is something I've identified, and I call it disability privilege. And I'm sure many of the people that are watching right now, if they have disabilities, they're going to be able to relate to it. And a lot of people don't even want me to talk about it because disability privilege is the higher level of service that people with disabilities receive from people simply because of the presence of a physical disability. A lot of times when I go places, people will see me and they'll go, "Oh my gosh, how are you doing?" Or "It's so great to see you're here." Or people will open up doors for me. Or if I'm at a restaurant, a lot of times people will go to the people that I'm with and they'll ask if that they know what I want to eat or something something instead of asking me, which in many circles is a higher class of service. But it really manifests itself around the holidays when I go to malls and people just come up and give me money for no apparent reason, which is nice, but I always try and refuse it because I'm not selling pencils or ringing a bell. But it is something that I receive, and I always kind of thought it was great, but then I started really thinking about it, and again, I identified as disability privilege, but I don't know that it's really that great of a thing, because the reason why people are giving me extra help is because they think I can't do it by myself. And so disability
Mhm.
privilege stems from a lower expectation for what other people think I can do simply because I have a disability. And the real problem with it is not everybody gets the same amount of disability privilege. People get more disability privilege or more help or more attention from able-bodied people if they have a really compelling acquisition story. So like a Boston bombing victim is going to get way more support and help than a person who might have gotten injured in a drunk driving accident that they caused themselves. And so that's one factor. And the other factor is how well a person can pass as able-bodied. Now, I know
Mm.
that's kind of a diversity term, passing and stuff, but the way it manifests itself, people that have disabilities but less threatening disabilities are more often used in the media to portray inspiration porn or a successful life. And so you always see like a wounded warrior that's a single below the knee amputee, and they get some kind of a flex foot or a prosthetic that's going to make their life even better. And so their disability isn't threatening to able-bodied people. And so able-bodied people are more willing to look at that and go, wow, that's great, because they can internalize, well, if I ever have a disability, that person's doing well. And so maybe it won't be as threatening to me. And so the more disability privilege you get has everything to do with how sympathetic your acquisition story is and how well you don't pose a threat to able-bodied people. Do you have any experience with that yourself, or can you
And
relate?
that's, yeah, I was just about to say, I mean, you said a lot of things there, but so many things that I in particular relate with. A couple of years ago, as you know, I was Miss Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And the day after I won Miss Iowa, I was called by every national news organization to come speak on their
Wow.
shows.
Mm-hmm.
But what did
That's
I do
great. What a neat
differently?
opportunity.
Well, but what disability privilege is that? I had just, there were 50 other girls who had just won in a state just like me. And what was the thing that was deciphering me from them? It was the fact that I had a disability. What a privilege. Really,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, what a privilege that I could have gone on those shows. I actually chose not to.
Oh,
And I
wow.
didn't want to go on the shows because I felt like it was pointing out in a bad way the difference that I had. So I certainly
Right.
identify with that. Yeah, what are you really talked about those two factors based on what story you may have to go along with it. If you were a wounded warrior, let's say, or have some sort of backstory to go along with you, and posing a threat to the able-bodied community. Can you kind of elaborate on what that means a bit more?
Well, there's two separate things and directions that I could go there. The first one is the posing a threat to the able-bodied community. Being out and about all the time, a lot of times people will come over and they'll have a conversation with me, but the conversation that they have with me is a conversation that they want to have. And it's based on their expectation for the reason why I don't have any legs. And I'm about the right age. I'm kind of
Mm,
the right build. A lot of times people think I could possibly be a veteran. And so people come
mm.
over and they'll go, veteran? And I'll tell them, no, I was born without any. I did it the easy way. And then unfortunately, they get disappointed because they were hoping that they could, say thank you to a veteran. But in that moment, I don't want to be like, no, blah. But I would never pose myself as a veteran because those guys earned it in a completely legitimate and maybe even more legitimate that way than I did. At least they deserve the praise. And so you have to have the kind of the conversation that people want to have with you before you can have the conversation that you want to have. So I have to get past the idea or their perception of the nature of my disability, and then I have to kind of make them okay with it, and then I get to talk about what I want to talk about. A good illustration about this is a couple of days ago, I was just shopping at a grocery store like everybody else, and I'm a single guy, and so I want to go out and try and meet as many people as I can and have good conversations with them. And there was an attractive woman sitting there looking at the eggs, and I needed some eggs too. And I went over and I'm trying to think, gosh, what would be a good opening line? I don't want to be too cheesy about anything, but I was thinking, I buy the brown eggs. and I think they taste better. And so maybe I could pose something like that. So I looked at her and I said, hey, do you think the brown ones taste any better? Which I think is kind of a, nonchalant, kind of non-threatening way to start a conversation. And she looked at me, but instead of answering the question that I asked, she actually said, oh, do you need me to reach them for you? And so before I even had a conversation with her, she was having a conversation, probably, at least this is my assumption, and I could be wrong, but by the way she answered the question that I think she thought I was going to ask. And that's not the conversation I wanted to have. I didn't want to have the disability conversation with her, but I've learned I kind of have to. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason why I have to is I really do think that a person with a disability is threatening to an able-bodied person, because able-bodied people are only temporarily able-bodied, and we are an elective minority group. And so I think people want to try and get over it, the threat that a disability poses to them, and so they come up with words like differently abled or handicapable, and those are all things that able-bodied people tell me that I should self-identify as. I don't really hear a lot of disabled people telling other disabled people that they're handicapable, and I think that's because able-bodied people want to, again, minimize the threat or the perception of the threat of acquiring a disability in their life.
Yeah, I would not disagree with what you're saying there. I have never, I have never had somebody else say disability in our community
Sure.
as a bad word, and almost, I think that is kind of a thing that I experienced, and I know in speaking to you, you recently have as well. Actually, in my adult life, I had to come to a place where I accepted the fact that I identified with this word disability, and that word disability wasn't a bad thing. Although there are many bad ideas that go along with it. So where is the power in, first of all, accepting the fact that you're identifying with this community and understanding that there are bad connotations that go along with it, and then understanding that when you're meeting people, your starter conversation with them is going to be about this word that maybe doesn't have a positive connotation behind
Connotations.
it.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's funny. I'm the only person in my family with any kind of a physical disability, and of course, my parents didn't know that I was going to be born with a disability, and
Yeah.
so I was raised able-bodied, and so I've really never identified even with the word disabled until a couple of years ago, when I
Yeah.
finally came to grips with the idea that, yeah, the reason why people treat you differently is because you're disabled. But I never saw myself that way, and it was easier for me to get more disability privilege by not seeing me that way, because people that are able-bodied would rather help out someone who in their mind is overcoming challenges and trying to do as many things as they possibly can. You know what, probably I'm the same way. If I see somebody trying to work hard, it's easier for me to support them than to look at somebody who may be wallowing or not achieving whatever success I think that they could possibly achieve. And so I've always wanted to be the person that portrayed myself as able-bodied as I possibly can, and it manifests itself in some really weird ways. Like, I'm sitting in my car right now, and I don't actually hang my handicap parking permit on my rear view mirror until I park the car, primarily because I don't want people to see me. And if I pull out in front of them, then they go, oh, well, he's disabled, and give me an excuse for that, or
Huh.
make an assumption about me and how I'm driving simply because I have the placard. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a little dumb game I play sometimes. What I'll do is I'll pull into a handicap spot and then I'll text or something like that before I get out. And people are always advocates for handicap parking. And so many times, I guess I look really able-bodied sitting, behind the driver's seat. So people will come over, they'll tap on my window, and they'll be like, "You can't park here." And I'm always like, "What?" And I push the electric open door button right behind, for the door right behind my
Yep.
driver's side door, and it opens up, and boom, there's my wheelchair. And then people see it and they go, "Oh, I'm really sorry." And I'm like, "Ha ha ha!" In my mind, I fooled you, ha ha. But in that moment, I've got to really internalize it and realize the person that I'm fooling is myself, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to portray myself as something that I'm not in order to maybe get over on other people. And so it really has been an interesting ride for me to try and truly come to grips with the idea that I am disabled. But since I've come to understand that I am, and people perceive me that way, it really explains a lot of the interaction that I have every day. Like, everyone my age and a little bit older, they've always been trained that if you ever see somebody in a worse situation than yourself, you probably shouldn't like look at them because that's rude. And so like people don't look at beggars on the side of the road or whatever. But that also extends to me because people see me and they go, well, obviously he's doesn't have any legs. It must be a bad life. I don't want to, pay attention to him. So they avert their eyes. Or if I'm at Home Depot, they'll see me, they'll turn around, they'll walk down a different aisle. And
Mm-hmm.
what's crazy about that is because I didn't see myself as disabled, I never knew why they were doing it. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would go, oh God, did I offend that person? Did I
Mm-hmm.
say something? Did I do something? And I never made it about the disability because I didn't think it was about the disability. But now I know it's about the disability. And so I've actually found more of a peace of mind and a comfort in understanding why people interact with me the way they do. And it
Mm-hmm.
also gives me a better platform to try and reach out to them, to try and make them more at ease with the fact that I am disabled if it's a person that I want to choose to interact with. And so I don't know, are there ever times in your life that you try and maybe portray yourself as able bodied not to pose as a threat to other people? Or maybe that's just me and something that I do.
No, no, absolutely I do. And I have broken it down in a very similar yet different way than you. In my brain, the way I explain it to other people is the only way that you can really get to know me personally is through a 3-step process. The
Oh
first
gosh, you
step,
have 3 steps.
I have three
That's
steps.
awesome.
I'm
Okay,
telling you, I
I'm
have
ready. I'm
steps. Are
ready.
you
What are
listening?
they? I should be writing
So
these down.
it's the same thing that you were saying. You say it much more eloquently and much more well thought out than I do. But here's my version. My
Please.
version is I am going to approach you, make you feel comfortable, whether that's me starting the conversation about my hand or not. It is
Mm-hmm.
I am in some way being warm to you, so you
Mm-hmm.
know that I am confident, that I am
Mm-hmm.
capable, and that I am not going to ask you to get the brown eggs for me, right?
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
that's
Yeah, it's
so
like you have to do both sides of the conversation for them to put them at ease
yes.
almost.
Yes, I have
Huh.
to exude confidence so they know that I am okay. And then that
Wow.
second step is the other person is comfortable enough with me that I can introduce the fact that yes, and here are the basic things you need to know. And your kind of laundry list. These are the basic 5 things you need to know. I was born this way. It doesn't hurt. The doctors don't know why. I'm totally fine. Whatever, the laundry list of things. And
Yeah.
then the third ring I have to jump through with every person is they finally will be comfortable enough with me that they'll ask me questions about what it's
Mm-hmm.
like to live with one hand.
Mm-hmm.
And once
Yeah.
they have an understanding of that, then finally I feel like I can cross over into the you are just Nikki world.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's how I have kind of broken it down in my brain. You have broken it
Yeah.
down again much more eloquently than
Well,
I have.
what I do is I try and watch people and see how other people handle their life, and then try and make it about myself. In order for me to
Mm.
understand anything, I really have to try and make it about me. And it's not exactly a perfect parallel here, but let me roll back a little bit and say I take a little bit of a different tact than you do because what I try and do is not mention it.
Mm.
If they bring it up, then I'll do my little dance about born without any, but I did it the easy way. But normally, I just try and interact with people in a very non threatening way where I try and minimize the impact of my disability on them as much as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Because a friend of mine, and it's going to sound really crazy, but the first time I met him, he introduced himself and he goes, hi, my name's John, and I've got 5,000 naked Barbie dolls at my house. And I looked at him and I went, whoa, I trying to think, what does 5,000 naked Barbie dolls actually look like? And then I'm like, didn't I see some serial killer on some movie that kept naked Barbie dolls? And I'm like, to myself, this is not somebody that I really want to, get to know. And so I thought, maybe if I'm being turned off by him being very specific about some characteristic about himself, maybe I should not lead with my difference right away either, or what's
Mm.
important. Maybe I should try and minimize my difference to try and fit in as much as I can. I always say a lot of people do it, and I think we call it dating. We minimize
Mm.
our differences to try and be as mainstream as we can, and then after we get to know somebody, then we can kind of reveal more about ourselves. And here's how
Sure.
the weird thing that his naked Barbie dolls manifests himself to me. after he told me that, I wasn't really interested, and I was kind of like, but we also had like a triangle friend together, and at one point we were out, and he's like, "Man, we got to go over to his house," and I'm like, "The Barbie doll guy house?" He's like, "Yeah," and so I'm like, "Okay," so we went over to his house, and here's the reason why he's got 5,000 naked Barbie dolls. It
Okay.
turns out he and his family collect new and lightly used Barbie dolls. And then they take mineral spirits and they take off all the original makeup that comes on the doll. And then they paint back on culturally appropriate makeup depending on where they're sending that doll to the country
Cool.
around the world. And then friends and family also hand make culturally appropriate clothing for the doll. And
Cool.
so it totally changed my perception of him. And
Hmm.
what it really showed me is, I was making a lot of judgments about him based on what he was leading with. And if I could have changed the interaction, I wish he would have been more specific about why he has the naked Barbie dolls. And then in my mind, I would have been probably more okay with it. But what I really learned was, everybody has way more to their story than what they're leading with. And everybody's got their own coping strategies and ways that they like to meet people and how they lead. I find still the easiest thing for me to do is to not bring it up until somebody else brings it up. And I do crazy things like if you and I are going to go somewhere, like to a movie or whatever, I would immediately lead by saying, "Let me drive." Because then you wouldn't have to manage my wheelchair. Or if you were going to, go to dinner with me, I'd say, "Well, go to my house because I don't have a disability in my house because my house is all in one level and everything's perfect. I don't have a ton of accommodation, but I have what I need." And so it's easier for me to be able-bodied in my environment than it is in somebody else's because I've had people where they'd say, I want to go over I want you to come to my house, but how would we get your wheelchair up the stairs? And I'm like, well, if you'd be willing to carry it or I can pull it or I'll do what I want to because again I'm the guy that wants to have the experience.
Enable.
But it's
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, but I would rather not people see me as a person who needs extra accommodations because in my mind, I don't want them to have to, well, first of all, feel sorry for me because of maybe extra help that I would need. But I also don't want them to think, well, that's really going to put a lot of pressure on our relationship because I'm going to have to help him, blah, blah, blah. And so I find that the more I can take care of myself, and again, I'm very lucky. I don't have legs, but I really do consider myself to be a person that has a minimum disability. And
Yeah.
so it is easy for me to accommodate myself in most every way. And I do think that, my disability oftentimes exists in other people's minds more than it does in mine until they come over and you remind me that I have a disability by saying, well, you probably can't do that. Or even something as simple as offering to help me do something.
Yep.
Um, it's not that I don't want people to help, but what I hear in my internal voice, it maybe undermines the person that I want to be sometimes when they come over and say, "Hey, can I help you with something?" The first thing I hear is them saying, "You probably can't do this by yourself." But the one that really undermines my confidence is, "You probably need this because you're different." And I don't want to see myself as different because I don't see myself as different. And so I don't want people to offer me help because they're saying, "Can I help you?" I'm hearing, "You're someone that needs extra help because you're disabled." And that's not my identity. And so I don't want people to see it. And so, people always say, "Well, what's the right thing to do?" Well, unfortunately, I think it's different for every single person, just like every
Mhm.
disability is
I was
different.
just about to say
Everybody is,
that to you.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody's at a different place with their own development. And so now what I try and do is I try and measure people's intent
Yeah.
rather than the impact that it has on me. Can you relate to that too? How do you internalize it?
Absolutely. I think intent is the hugest, best, biggest word you can use there because there is no right way because everybody's experience is so different. That's
Oh, completely.
absolutely correct. And I get that same question all the time. Then what is the appropriate way to do it? I
Yeah.
don't want to make a fool of myself. I don't want to make the person I'm asking for help feel bad. What is the right way? And intent, I think, is everything. You can only control your reaction. And
Right.
and I mean that about myself and about the person asking for help. So my
Yeah.
reaction to them asking me for help, I go into what I call teacher mode when people ask me those questions, and I
Yeah.
use it as an opportunity to teach. No, thank you. I'm able to do that. Perhaps if I was, trying to lift a very heavy suitcase, I would need your help. But is that because I'm a girl and don't have the same muscle tone as a man, or is it because I have one
Right.
hand? I don't,
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
But I think I just have started to really focus on the fact that that teacher mode can turn on, and trying to take pleasure in the fact that it is a teaching moment, and to be
Yeah.
okay with that, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's probably a defense mechanism too. I mean, we all have them, to try and protect the person that we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to tell people that it doesn't hurt. I mean, obviously, they're called microaggressions because they do hurt a little bit. But
Sure.
for my own sanity and to also try and understand where that other person is coming from, they're already engaging in a high risk behavior. They're coming over and they're interacting with somebody who probably is completely different than them. And I don't know
Yep.
if they have a relatable instance. I don't know if they have a family member that they've taken care of or something like that. But they're reaching out, and for me to not try and handle that situation as well as I possibly can, even if it's making a negative impact on me, I don't necessarily want to translate that back onto them, because the last thing I would ever want to do is to try and keep them from having the inspiration to have the
Yeah.
next conversation. Because
Yeah.
right now, there's so many people that would rather not put themselves out there. I call it diversity quicksand. I don't know if you've ever said something unintentionally and it's gotten you in trouble, and you try and make it better, but you can never really make it better. And eventually you just die. And so,
You just fall in the hole.
yeah, exactly. Just put your head down. It'll get better tomorrow, maybe, if you can live. But I don't want to leave that impact on people. And so even when they are saying things that I'm feeling bad about and it's making a negative impact on me, I want to. Well, I played volleyball for a while, and so the coach always said, "Better the ball." How do you expect the next person to be able to be successful doing something with the ball if you don't make a good pass? And
Mm.
so, better the ball. Try
I
and
like
put
that.
people in the better situation so they can do something better the next time too. And so even when it might not be making me feel the best, I don't want to try and do something that would thwart that person from maybe having the next good interaction with the next person, or prevent them from having interaction in the future. So again, it's not that the impact doesn't make an impact on me, but I think, again, because we both are people that are relatively extraordinary and we have a story to tell, and people give us a chance to tell that story. I think we have to have a little bit of respect, and know that we do have to wave the flag. I don't want to wave the flag of education every single day, but I know it's my job, and I'm willing to do it, and I need to do it because I want the next best person to have the next best experience, and that means me trying to give the person who's interacting with me the best shot at having a good interaction with me, so they will have the next interaction.
All about it. Matt, I want to be respectful of your time because, yet again, I know you are on the road and traveling.
Sure.
But the last question before I actually let you get back to
Okay. Yeah.
driving again is, I want to know what is next for you, and how people, if they are inspired by you, or they really have really dug our conversation tonight, how they can find you.
Yeah. Well, I've got a website. If you just Google Matt No Legs, or No Legs Matt, MATT and No Legs, it'll get to my website. And at some point next year, probably early next year, I'll have a book called Able Bodied Like Me that I'm going to be hopefully getting published and being able to present my ideas and in more of an easy form that people can relate to and internalize without necessarily having to have the conversation with me in person. And so hopefully that'll be out there, and a lot of people will have more of my perspective shared with them through them reading my book. But thanks for the opportunity. Honestly, you're a delight. I really understand why people follow you. You just have got a great story and a great personality, and I just really appreciate you including me in the project that you're working on. So thanks again.
Oh, of course. And of course, I'm always thankful to have to be surrounded by amazing people who are willing to up and join me on here. Who knows what random question I'm going to throw at you. What's your favorite color, Matt? Who knows?
Sure. Well, I've got
But yet
answers for all
again,
of them. So just let me know what you need.
well, we for sure want to bring you back because you and I privately have discussed that this is such a big topic that there is so much more to talk about. And we thought it was really important to lay this foundational conversation before we moved on to that step 2 conversation. So if you will, I would love to have you back again in the new year so we can talk about that next step and kind of go a step further. But yet again, thank you so much for joining us tonight on Loud and Proud.
No problem. Thanks for having me again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. I'll be driving.
Thank you. You as well. Get there safe. And yet again, to those who are watching, you can find Matt. I will put up his name once more for you so you can see that. You can Google him to find him and connect with him. Join us next week, same time, same place, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Loud and proud. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.